how, the difference between being 12 and 16, you're a completely different person. You're a completely different person from 16 to 18. Like when you get your driver's license, like life changes dramatically.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we were walking through all of these different things and about how when you get out of school, whether it's high school or college, all of a sudden you've got no schedule and it's up to you how you're going to live. And that is overwhelming to some people. So anyway,
I got something to say about that. When we did the men's development a couple weeks ago, there were two young men there. I don't want to mention their names, but anyway, that little section where I was talking about the characteristics of Gen Z and why I believe that they're going to be part of this next great move, whether it's in business or whether it's spiritually, whatever, they are going to be part of this. And I was talking about the characteristics. I looked back, and these two guys, these two young men, and I don't know, one's in his teens and one just got married, and they're both back there like, look at you doing this.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's age, that would keep us from communicating with younger men the importance of some of the things we're talking about. I think you mentioned yesterday, or I listened to you about being seen. It's the thing that women like to kind of.
I think it's more feminine, yeah.
But they were seen when I was talking. They were identified, and once they realized that, hey, he's talking about this, me, they're listening, and especially when you look at the traits and the characteristics of this generation that are positive. I mean, every great move of God throughout the years has been a youth movement. And even when Jesus picked disciples, and I don't want to get too churchy here, but he picked young guys for the most part.
What's your understanding of their age?
I don't really know chronologically.
Okay. I got the impression that they were in their late teens.
But I would guess that since a lot of them there's no record of them having a wife or children, and that they were working a job like the fishermen, or they were doing other things. The tax collector, probably older. Luke,
and Peter had a wife.
Yeah, Peter definitely older. Luke a little older, but most of these guys were probably pretty young.
And probably was a wide age range.
Yeah, and there's probably evidenced by the fact Jesus himself was, around 30. And there's probably a wide age range, but the fact that some of them outlived Jesus by 50, 60 years to write their accounts.
Yeah.
They had to have been young guys, So maybe John was in his mid-20s, when Jesus found him.
That is interesting. I'm gonna have to dig into that a little bit.
Yeah, but almost always it's a youth movement. The counterculture movement, the hippie generation, all those things that happened, the Jesus movement. Those things were all initiated by some grassroots movement of young people. And they were helped along by older guys. They were given places to worship. Were given some basic understandings. The movement itself was generated, though, by the energy of their youth and their desire for something to change, to be different, to move ahead, to progress. And I think that's what we have to recognize, is that what I knew as a kid, is almost foolish to what, my sons, my 12-year-old who's about to turn 13 tomorrow, knows. Not only his intellect and his understanding and the education he's received, but his understanding of technology, his understanding of the world is so much larger because he has access to so much information all the time. And so there has to be a recognition on our part that there are going to be guys who are going to want to move and shake, and we can't force them to sit here in church or in a business or any other place or in our homes and do things like we did them, because that's an unrealistic expectation. Secondly, there won't be any desire or motivation on their part to do that. The next generation coming up is going to want action. They're going to want challenge.
Yes.
It's one of the things I was thinking about when you guys were talking about encouragement, and I don't want to get ahead of you or anything else.
No, go.
But
Yeah, you're fine.
but there's components that go with encouragement. And one of the big ones is you had talked about how encouragement leads to, I like the definition, leads to something actionable. It leads to an
Mm-hmm.
action, right?
Yeah.
And along with that, I think encouragement has to have a challenge. And I think there's some other things we could talk about, that kind of groundwork to that
Mm-hmm.
challenge. And when we encourage them to do something, and young men, and we're trying to get them to move into to do something and do something actionable, there has to be, the Bible says that, encourage one another to love and good deeds. So
Mm-hmm.
we've got to paint a picture about what this goal is, what these good deeds are, what are you, what are you
Mm-hmm.
trying to, because what am I going to encourage you to? Just keep living and just keep coming to church
Yeah.
and keep doing this,
Oh,
and
dude.
keep doing that? Or are we
That's
going to encourage people to be like world changers? Are we going to, in
yes.
business
Yes.
and in
Yes. Yes.
families and in church, is our call to them just to do what we've been doing and just keep the ball rolling? Or are we going to embrace innovation and say, no, 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 I
Yes.
need to understand what this generation, and
Yes.
let you innovate, let you come
Yes.
up with the things that are going to propel this movement, this business, this family, whatever it is. And if we don't have that kind of understanding, then I think we're going to miss a great opportunity, which is at our doorstep. And that's what I was talking about, the men's development, is that there's a generation that is chomping at the bit to know something without purpose, without us explaining to them the importance of the things that we were trying to move them towards, and without painting a picture of them in it and being a major player in it, we're going to fail to connect.
Okay. So two things
Sorry,
on that.
yeah, go ahead.
Well, three things on that. One is you're kind of making me think that because the talk at Men's Development Day was really good, um, and I do think that it probably would be something that, because I recorded it,
Hmm.
so I may just actually add that to the channel because it was a really great talk for this. Um, and as much as I said that, yes, it was the way that you framed that, because thinking back, I remember in my early 20s the importance of feeling like somebody understood where I was coming from.
Yeah.
I don't feel that anymore. I kind of came to a place where I I think that you have to come to a place eventually, if you're going to be independent, where you can't really give that too much mind share.
Hmm.
But
And maybe don't even need it.
to a degree,
Yeah.
after you get a really good handle on who you are, um, that behaves as kind of an armor. And, like when people are rude to me, my youngest daughter made a comment one time that she thinks that I'm the most bulletproof person she's ever met, because people can shoot their mouth off and say whatever they want. And my response to that is, the thing is that when you're rude to me, it actually doesn't tell me anything about me. It tells me something about you,
Right.
right? Because I'm pretty sure, I'm pretty confident that I know who I am, and you shooting off and saying something rude doesn't actually enlighten me at all.
Hmm.
Um, and but yeah, I think that there's definitely something in there. That's I'm gonna be sure to put that in my note. That's an important thing to be able to reach people. I remembered hearing sermons probably 25 years ago where somebody made a comment in there that Jesus didn't die for us to come to church. And you're right that there's a lot of people that the talk is, like as though the goal is to fill these pews up and to
Exactly.
get lots of people here.
Exactly.
That should be like a side effect of success.
Hmm.
That people in relation with Christ, that uh, that people have gotten saved, and they're doing cool stuff, and they're excited about God, and they attend church.
Hmm.
But I think that sometimes we're a little bit too focused on is the church full?
Like the end game, like the goal is church attendance.
Yeah.
It, Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. How do we measure real success? How do we know that we're actually doing a good job?
Mm-hmm.
Is that people are lit and on fire and excited about the things of God and are pursuing and seeking God.
Mm-hmm.
Um, okay.
If
Yeah.
I was going to spend time with somebody um, in a discipleship setting, or
Mhm.
if I was going to spend time with somebody in a business, sense, and I was going to invest myself in them, I would never invest myself in somebody who didn't want to do something remarkable.
Mm.
And they probably don't even know what that remarkable is, but they just have something burning inside them that says, I'm created
Mm-hmm.
for more. And I
Mm-hmm.
think those are the young men, either in business, every young man needs to be trained. Every young man needs to be taught,
Mm-hmm.
As an example, my son Avi, he's been training, martial arts for years, and boxing, and he's at a very high level, but to the exclusion of almost everything else in his life.
Mm.
He didn't like school.
Mm-hmm.
Avi, I hope you don't, if you see this, you don't mind me talking. He's not really enamored with much of anything else.
But okay,
But he's
so you
singularly
touched
focused
on
on it
something that's super hot for me.
because he believes that he's going to do something remarkable, and he is, and I believe it. And so when I talk to him, I tell him, I believe it, man. I believe I'm going to see you one day, and I'm going to see you knock somebody out in the ring, and I'm going to be like, yeah. Not that I want somebody to get knocked out, but that's the goal of fighting,
Yeah, yeah,
is
yeah.
to submit. Anyway, go ahead.
Well, okay, so you said to the exclusion of academics, okay? But the thing is that does he like learning? Does he like to, does he like to increase in the things that are interesting to him?
Of course,
Okay, so piss on academics. Nobody cares about your degree unless it has something to do with what you do.
what you're passionate about.
And
Yeah.
and it's probably also to the exclusion of being able to work clay and to be able to play music and to be able to do a whole host of other things.
Mm-hmm.
If you can focus in and narrow in on being okay, the people that play sports, generally speaking, they're good at one thing, right? They're good at catching the ball. They're
Right.
good at passing the ball.
Yeah.
They're good
They're on the
at
line.
shooting a three-pointer.
Yeah, yeah.
They're good at just a handful of things.
Yeah.
Even the best basketball players are rarely good at both ends of the court.
A prime
Most
example would
of
be
them.
a kicker.
What's that?
Yeah, prime example would be a kicker in a football team.
Yeah. If and if you can imagine the kicker having a conversation with or a defensive end having a conversation with the coach, and they're like, I'm trying to work on my kicking game, right? What are we doing? Why are you working on your kicking game?
Exactly.
I want you working on your blocking
Exactly.
game, and your, I want you to remember how we run these plays.
Mm-hmm.
Quit tripping over guys. I don't care about your kicking game. I got a guy for that.
Mm-hmm. So
To the exclusion of other things, that's a good thing. I want my chef to be good at cooking,
Yeah.
not doing music.
there are some exceptions to that. Like I do like him to take the garbage out, and he's got a big dog, and I do like him to clean the dog poop out of the yard. You know what I mean?
For sure.
So those things I think we kind of expect, but those are low key. We need to understand that guys who are passionate and guys who are going to be world changers and guys who are going to make a difference are going to have difficulty at some point with the mundane. They're not going to be satisfied, and that's why I'm talking about young people being challenged, young men being challenged in business and church and in family, because we're looking for the guys that are not going to be satisfied with just getting by. They want to make a mark.
The thing with encouragement, okay, one of the things that okay, maybe with being seen, I'm not even sure how to quite frame this. One of the things that seems to be celebrated in the world is getting good grades. Okay? But like my office manager, shop manager, we were having a conversation. Actually, when I first hired her, she made some comment. She goes, the thing that made me weird in high school is now what I'm getting paid for. She liked to organize stuff, right?
Right.
And then she actually made the comment. She goes, she said that she's not creative. And I said, No. I said, you're quite creative. You're just creative in ways that are not generally celebrated
Like
by
art,
the world.
music, and things like that.
Music,
Hmm.
art, like where you're painting stuff. I said, I tell you that I need us to keep track of these figures, and I need us to keep track of these things, and I need to keep
Hmm.
this organized and on schedule. And then I say, and you just go figure it out. And then you show me what you did, and I'm like, that's really clever.
Hmm.
That is a form of creativity. The farther along we get, the more complex we get, the more she's going to be exerting that creativity. It's a specific creativity
Yeah.
that's not celebrated as, like, you're not going to wind up um, with people wanting to. People are going to watch the musician's YouTube channel long before they watch your video on how to organize, documents so that they're easier to find, or your file structure in the computer, you know?
Hmm.
Um, it's just something that's not celebrated or popularly called creativity,
Hmm.
but it 100% is, and it has a lot of value.
Hmm. This brings me back to something I was thinking about relative to encouragement,
Uh-huh.
and those components I was talking about. That one of the big, well, there are two things that are kind of related, but one is, I think most of us don't walk around having God drop in our mind or our hearts some intimate detail about some person we hardly know.
Hmm.
Okay, that's just not the normal for most people.
Yeah.
And so I think to really be effective as somebody who's going to encourage another person, we have to have some type of relationship with this other person, whether it's as a friend or as a boss or as a pastor or as whatever that is. We have to have a dialogue going. We have to have a basic understanding. Yeah, as encouragers, we have to have a basic understanding of who that person is. Okay,
Hmm.
and secondly, we have to understand that you were just talking about it with the gal who works for you, is that you see your creativity in a specific way, and in order to encourage her, that understanding has to be in place, and also the understanding of what you guys are trying to accomplish has to be in place.
Hmm.
But how can you encourage somebody without a relationship, a dialogue, or at least a discovery, a beginning, opening
Yes.
salvo, and and there has to be a certain amount of trust on the part of the other person, because you, people really have a very skewed perception of who they are as people, what their value is, what they're capable of, what their potential is, what they were created for,
Hmm.
whose image they were created in. All those things are, other people find difficult. So as we're going to be encouragers, or we're going to be leaders, or we're going to be, whatever leadership position we have, or whatever the relationship is, we've got to be able to look at them and say, wow, they're really good, just like you're doing with your assistant, really good with this way. They have these gifts, they have this skill set. Um, and we have to see the potential in them, whether that potential comes from observation or whether that potential comes from what the Word of God has already said about them. We have to see the potential and speak to that potential, because encouragement could be called a number of different things, and they're all nuanced, but they all come back to encouragement. So we have to see what we can be. Any good coach is going to coach their team beyond the team's expectation. Individual players are going to have to be coached beyond what they think they're capable of doing. If we speak into them and encourage them to the point where they start believing that what we're saying is real or could be real in their life, they will go for it if they have the passion required. And I think for us to be like really effective, we're going to have to get inside somebody's head and heart a little bit,
Yes.
so that
100%.
they're going to have to believe that we understand what's in their head and what's in their heart.
Yes. 100%.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I think without that component, our encouragement just turns into, like, what did you call it? Not flattery, but you use another word. And I appreciated the difference distinguishing between encouragement and comfort, or just being
Oh,
sympathetic.
dude, drives me nuts.
That's massive. Comfort can be encouragement,
Oh, yeah, 100%.
you
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
but
But there's way too much emphasis on, like, it's the definition has been kind of hijacked in in an unfortunately feel-good environment that we live in now.
Right.
One of the things that you said actually got me thinking back on. I have thought for the longest time that curiosity is a major component of love. Asking somebody the follow-up question, I've seen more people get into fights because nobody asked for a deeper explanation of the other side. And
It's such a simple question.
everybody's just so desperately want to be understood.
Mm-hmm.
And once you let the other person go first and let them go second and let them go third until you can explain to them. I think that this is a part of, we see it most obviously, I think, in our political situation in the country,
Mm-hmm.
where everybody's talking, nobody's listening. If I ask somebody on the other side of the aisle, can you explain my position? They couldn't without being sarcastic and without being rude,
Mm-hmm.
right? I know that if I can say, hey, let me see if I understand you, and I explain their position even better than them, they're going to be like, oh. And then I say, I used to think that way. I completely understand where you're coming from. And then I started understanding these other things, and the world that I want to live in is actually better served by these ideals.
Mm-hmm.
Then I can be persuasive,
Mm-hmm.
right? Yeah.
You're talking about that beautiful thing called open dialogue. Like an open and fearless exchange of ideas without fear of,
The woman that works for me, man, she was not used to having open dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
We have very open conversations about work, and one of the greatest wins that I had, I was just so giddy. There was a mistake made, and she casually said, because she's comfortable, she said, yeah, that was mine. And this is what I'm going to do to fix it.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, that's such a win for me. Like, I hate being around people that can't own their own mistakes.
Yeah.
This is my own quote. I'm quoting myself here. When we wish that life was easier, we discourage ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
What's your take on that?
That's pretty general. When we wish that life was easier, we discouraging ourselves.
Darn, I didn't type that out very well. Yeah. When we wish that life was easier, we are discouraging ourselves.
Yeah. Okay. I thought of something. I know a couple who have been in the mission field, and then they came to this church that I had planted years ago, a decade ago or whatever it was. But and I used to say this. I used to say as a turning point, man, be careful how you pray for patience, because God will take you to task on that. And she said, I think she wanted me to know, because she presented and her husband presented at the church. She wanted me to know that she didn't agree completely with that. And so she said, I used to hear that, you shouldn't pray for patience because, it'll make your life difficult. And she said, I'll pray for whatever God wants because it'll make me better. It'll make me more faithful. It'll build my faith and all those kinds of things. And I think that statement, in a very general sense, is true. I think everybody on the planet wishes life was easy. I don't know anybody who said, yeah, I want a really tough life. But when we understand, when we have purpose and we have a firm grasp on who we are and where we're going, I think we welcome some of the adversities because it does make us better. Like years ago, I made a really huge mistake in my company. And I actually went to the board of directors, who were my clients at that point for this large association. And I told him, I said, here, man, his mistake is tens of thousands of dollars. And I said, I'm going to hand my resignation in. I'm sorry. You know, I can correct this, but I understand if. And one of the guys said to me, well, you know, SH, it happens. You
Yeah,
know? And I actually preached a message on that, because when we own those mistakes and when we own those difficult times, then we own the wisdom and the growth that comes out of it. When we don't own those things, we can't own the teaching experience that comes with them, right? Because we're not responsible. The outcomes are not my responsibility. I can't learn from that, you know? So I think that that's a really true statement. And going back to encouragement, I was in line with this. One of the nuances of encouragement is we have to be really sensitive to the person that we're trying to bring encouragement to. Some people are very sensitive, you know, and the littlest word can sound like a personal attack.
Yeah,
But if you ever seen that movie about the football team, I think it's on Any Given Sunday or something like that, where they have I can't remember the name, the title, but there's the quarterback is, you know, kind of injured, and they're coming up and they got a bowl game coming up. It's pro ball. And this scene always sticks with me, and he's coming up with all these reasons why he can't play. You know, he's injured, not feeling good and stuff. And his wife says, "You are," and tells him his name and just reads him the riot act, and he ends up playing the game, right? I think depending on the level of where somebody's at, as you know, and how much they want what they're going for, I think our encouragement can actually sound pretty harsh at times, can actually be something that will be, but we have to understand that they're going to hear it as such. And I think a brother, especially in the Lord, but a brother in arms and anything, who's willing just to kind of get in your face a little bit, when they see that you aren't rising to your potential, or even going after the things that you said you wanted to do, the things that you told me were your goals in life. I think that there's value in it, and I think we can press really hard. I think if you read the account in the book of Acts about Paul and his interactions with John Mark, and you know, there were times when he was like, "No, I'm not doing this at all. You're not going with me. I'm gonna," you know, and gave reasons why. I mean, some of those letters, some of those epistles to churches were pretty tough, but they were meant to be encouragement all the time. Sometimes a rebuke, sometimes a little less, like an exhortation. But for me, all of those are nuances of encouragement. Whether we exhort or whether we rebuke or we correct or we discipline, the goal always has to be, I'm encouraging you to go forward in this. That's how God deals with us. His discipline is good, right? Tough times or whatever, if we don't want the discipline of God. We don't really want to be treated as sons and daughters. We really don't want to get better. We really don't want to be challenged. We really don't want faith in our lives. We don't want power in our lives unless we're ready to accept that. And as somebody who's been through a few things, I know what I'm talking about.
Okay, gosh, there's a truckload of things, and then you dropped that last part on there. Okay, so with respect to, there are people that you can and should get right in their face and be like, hey, you know what? You know, don't make me believe in you more than you believe in you.
Right.
Don't make me want this more than you.
Right. Yeah.
You know, when I look at you, I see, you know, X, Y, and Z, and you're behaving like A, B, and C.
Right.
And my wife actually did this to me a little bit ago, where she was getting very frustrated with me because in her eyes, I was playing smaller than I should, or I was going slower than I should, which is super weird that she would say that to me. But she was right.
You're like the guy said in the text to me, like, "Okay, we're going to do this. Then we're going to do this podcast. We're going to do this. I want you to be here for the reaction video. Here's 5 videos for you to look at."
And she's like, you need to get out there and go sell this stuff and go do this stuff. You know, she was just exasperated. She's like, I don't want another year to go by and nothing gets done on this. And I'm like,
good brother.
Gosh, you're right. okay, no, you're right. Like it was so weird though hearing that from her. Like and I'm not used to hearing that from anybody. But
It's like the Nike logo, man. Quit talking about it. Just go do it. Just do it.
yes, there's some people that they would take it as a personal attack,
Mm-hmm.
not as a challenge, because that's what it is. It's a challenge.
Yeah.
It's a challenge for you to step up and be the best version of you.
Mm-hmm.
What's the best version of you look like? When you do that in your face thing, it isn't, I'm not asking you to tell me. I'm telling you what the best version is of you
Yeah.
that I see, and maybe barking it at you a little bit, whereas the person at the other end of the spectrum needs to be asked,
Mm-hmm.
what's the best version of you?
Yeah.
Why are you playing so small?
Mm-hmm.
Like I see A, B, and C. Like you could be doing this, and you're instead like cowering and behaving like somebody that really they just want to be comfortable
Mm-hmm.
and they want life to be easy. One of the greatest quotes that I heard, nothing is easy, but who wants nothing? Right? I freaking love that quote.
That's perfect. I've never talked to anybody who's told me I just want a mediocre life. I just want to fail.
But we've met dozens and hundreds of people that
Who
live
have,
that
by
way.
decision
Yes, they
or
live it
by
out.
lack of decision, by default, are allowing that to happen.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
100%.
Another part of that encouragement thing, or this kind of vein of thinking, is that we can't be afraid to try stuff. And I think one of your guests the other night talked about, it both said it at one point, just trying stuff until something works. We can't be afraid of negative outcomes or what we perceive as negative outcomes. And we can't accept that in the lives of other people. So, and what I mean by that is if somebody tries something and it fails miserably, right? Part of encouragement would be come alongside and say, okay, man, let's regroup. And I actually did this with my wife this morning because I evaluated my day yesterday and how productive I was and the things I got done and how I spent my hours and everything. And I think if we don't come alongside and say, okay, let's just break it down. Let's just figure out exactly, if you failed, all right, what did we learn? What did you learn? And I think that's the other thing, that kind of coming alongside somebody and saying, okay, well, things went to, hell. So now what? What are you going to do? How can I assist? How can I help? I think that for people who are really sensitive, sometimes you have to draw them along a little bit. But at some point, I mean, in my experience, there's people who just don't want to receive it and don't want to be challenged. They just won't. And I don't spend time with them because it's a drain on me personally. But the other part of it is, until they become passionate about something or until they really find something they want to accomplish or really believe, we can say and speak and do everything we can, but until they make the transition, until they go, oh, it's like the disciples. When they first got called, they didn't even know what they were signing up for. I'm just going to follow this guy around.
It's so weird.
And so they for the first 2 years, I said this in the men's development, for the first 2 years, they basically did nothing. They just watched and followed and wrote notes and talked about trying to figure stuff out and have little discussions with themselves and form their committees and try to figure out, what does that mean? But at some point when he said, okay, I'm going to send you guys out 2 by 2. So he spent 2 years encouraging, teaching, discipling, and then he sent them out 2 by 2. And now you got to go do. Okay. And it wasn't even a challenge.
School time's over.
Yeah. It was a commandment. You go do. And when they went out and they did, and they came back, what had happened? They had gone through a radical transformation, where they believed, man, even the demons were subject to us in your name. We, healed people. We preached. They came back stoked and they came back believing. Now, they needed that kind of experience because it was about to get really tough. In the last year, because that's when it got hairy. That's when Jesus started being really persecuted. They were going after him. They were trying to kill him. He was suffering, all kinds of persecution. And he knew that they needed that example, that he set for them in that experience. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I think we can't be afraid of coming along people who are really trying to work through stuff and saying, okay, you failed. All right, what did we learn? Playtime's over. Let's go do that's where I'm at in my life. Okay, you failed. Playtime's over.
Yeah. No, it's funny because you say that, and I'm reminded of when the 70 came back,
Mm-hmm.
and they're like the demons were, giving in, and people were getting healed, and Jesus is like, hey, celebrate the fact that your name is written in the Lamb's
The
Book
Book
of
of Life,
Life,
right? Marvel
and
not.
and 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 we can get sidetracked by success
Mm-hmm.
and but always come back to the fundamentals. All right. It's common to think that everyone has it all together except for you. This isolates us. This is the devil's work. How can we combat this?
Wow. How long you got? When I read this statement, the very first thing I think of is scripting. What I mean by that is every person that I've probably ever talked to, and this is probably true in my own life and in a lot of people's lives, is that we have kind of a script, and it's an ongoing script. It started when we were kids, when we first could remember whatever it is that we were supposed to remember. And our childhood life, our family life, the way we grew up, our experiences and
Oh,
everything
okay.
have created the beginning of that script.
Mm-hmm.
And then we come into contact with the world and we think about fame and fortune and all that kind of stuff. And we write a script for our lives, you know, and we imagine other people's scripted lives as, we see somebody who's successful, or we see, somebody who looks like like you said, they've got it all together.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the reconciliation between the life that I scripted for myself and the one I'm actually living creates in us the idea that, well, their script is working out fine and they're successful, they're doing great,
Mm-hmm.
but my script for my life is in the toilet because none of the stuff that I thought was going to happen has happened.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in terms of encouragement, Sandy and I actually talked about this morning. I think it's a Stephen Covey book that talks about this. But it is, we have the ability to rescript our lives.
Yeah.
But better yet, at any point that we're alive on the planet, we have the ability to accept and submit to the script that God has written for our lives. And that's the part of our lives that makes us aware of the fact that we were created for a purpose, and that my script doesn't matter. And when we start understanding that, then we start being less harsh on ourselves in terms of criticalness, and we start looking at ourselves in the difficulties we have and the challenges we have as something that can make us better, not something that's hurting me. It kind of goes back to that previous question. And we do look at other people, but I'll tell you what dispels that more than anything else is that transparency. But this is the devil's work, so it's a Christian perspective. And the more that we're transparent with each other in the church, the more we're going to see that I don't care. You could have, $100 million in the bank. I guarantee you got issues somewhere in your life.
Man,
without fail.
So I've seen it where I remember a while back, a few years back, that one guy lived in the nicest of neighborhoods, drove the Beamer,
Mm-hmm.
was living the high corporate life, was filing bankruptcy,
Mm-hmm.
right? But nobody would have known that. He never lived like any other way.
Mm-hmm.
And I would have, if I was asked, hey, would you want to switch places with this guy financially? I would have said in a second, absolutely, 100%.
Yeah, based on your
right?
perception, right?
Based on my lack of information on
Right.
where he really was at.
Exactly.
And the same thing could be said with a marriage. The same thing could be said with your kids, relationship with your kids.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's one of these things where I think I made a comment in one of the videos where I really do believe that if somebody is vulnerable in front of you and they tell you something that they don't really want the whole world to know,
Mm-hmm.
that if you're able to share something of your own that you would prefer the whole world not knowing,
Mm-hmm.
it makes it so that, like, it seems like the mechanics of it make it so that you're trading weapons,
Mm-hmm.
and they can feel a lot more comfortable knowing that
Yeah, you're talking about
that
that
you traded,
in that
you know, and
part
you
too.
gave
Yeah.
them something that um, it's a mutual trust gets established.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and as I say that, my second thought is, don't get too crazy with this, right? Because we've all been around people that,
There's
they,
there's risk.
especially when they're younger, in their 20s and 30s, they might uh, do something that belongs more like in a Saturday Night Live skit where one person says, yeah, I stole this thing, and then like, oh man, I feel that I just murdered somebody, like, keep it sort of proportional, use a little bit of discretion.
Right.
um
And there's an inherent risk, because you're trusting somebody with information.
yeah.
I mean, this is what you're talking about is really like if you looked at me in 1992 as, pastor of Turning Point, you would look at me, I think, and you would say, man, that guy's a spiritual guy, or whatever you think,
Yeah.
whatever your assessment was, but you don't get to see all of the stuff in my heart that led me to having an affair, you know? And that was actually, I'll tell you, being a pastor was actually one of the best places to isolate,
Oh man.
because I didn't, I was accountable to very few people. And everybody, because of the success we were having, thought, oh, this guy, he's got the answers. But so your point is well taken. Okay, here's what I really believe about this idea is that it is the devil's work, and we can combat it by being transparent, confessing our faults one to another, praying for one another that we might be healed. But the bigger part is if we would just get rid of class distinction within the church. Because there is no voice of God on the planet right now other than the Word of God and the believers who have put their faith in Him and are speaking His gospel. There is no pope. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah.
You understand what I'm getting at? We follow the world's pattern in terms of hierarchy in the church. You guys talked about meritocracy last, in that interview. And in the church, that's how we're geared. And I don't care. Call me a liar, prove me wrong. But when you have a gift, or you have a talent, or you have the ability to speak, or any number of things, you get preferential treatment.
Oh man. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And if you are that goofy guy walking around who's always disheveled, and maybe your mind's not all there, and you're socially awkward, you are treated differently. And there's just no way around that. And the only way to combat that is to recognize that we're all concluded under sin. And the other part of that is that before God in His perfection, we are all wretched and blind and poor and naked. There's just simply no way for us to come close to perfection. But in terms of encouraging people, we have to recognize that, with us, everything's impossible. With God, all things are possible. He's the one. We have to become His Frankenstein. We have to allow God to do what He wants with us. The only way to combat this is to find our self, our purpose, our being, find all of our recognition, hope, affirmation in God. It can come from other people, encouragement. It can come from other people and other believers, absolutely. But we have to recognize all the time that it's coming from God. It's flowing from God. If some brother or sister in the Lord gives you an encouragement, you got to take it as from God. You get blessed by somebody, you thank them for sure, but it comes from God. God enables the church to be what we are and calls us to be a body which simply doesn't recognize differences in people's, how do I want to say it? I want to say standing, but I'm not sure that's the right word, with God. We have to recognize that we are all equal in terms of our sinfulness and our inability to be perfect and our inability to please God at all times. We strive for it. That's the goal, right? But we just don't have those conversations. We're too, I'm just going to say it, we're just too busy in church uh, creating a social club, running around doing all these crazy activities instead of desiring the power of God, which comes through confession and prayer for each other. We would rather not be exposed and not have the power of God than to be exposed and have the power of God. You know why Peter walked in such power? He was exposed. He was exposed when he denied Jesus. He was exposed on the beach when Jesus made him breakfast. And even later in his ministry, he's exposed to somebody who was fearing the Judaizers. But he remained in a position of humility. And that's the ingredient that is missing in the church. We really don't want the power of God that much. We don't want the holiness of God. Because the minute, and I'll say it for myself, there are times when I don't want the power, I don't want the holiness of God because there's a cost associated with it.
Yes.
There's something I'm going to have to give up. And it's my ability to control. It's my script. It's my life. It's my thing that I dream for myself. And I heard a little bit of that from the interview, the young guy who you were interviewing. Mm-hmm. And he said it pretty good. I was pretty impressed with that guy. But we have to surrender. We've got to surrender the script. We got to surrender my plan. And without that, we're always going to live like this. We're always going to think somebody else has it. We're always going to think, because as long as you're pursuing your own plan, there's always going to be somebody who's got a better plan than you in human terms. Always. You know, no matter how much money you make, there's always somebody who's got more money.
There's something that you said in there that it seems to me that the same shield that we use to keep other people out of our mess, that same shield blocks the power of God in our lives.
Yeah, it keeps it inside. It traps God.
So, you know, one of the things that I think that would quite likely cause me to level up, that just in having this conversation, I'm realizing there's a handful of people that are in my life that I will, you know, talk to them about the things that I'm struggling with, right? I want to be open and transparent in some ways too, right? I'm thinking about the pastor or the leader, or maybe even the guy that is, you know, right now going to Bible college and is intending to plant a church 2 years from now, right? It seems to me that, like, listening to people like Craig Groeschel and listening to people that are at extraordinarily high levels, every once in a while, they'll make mention of friends that they've had for 30 years that they could say anything to.
Yeah.
And it seems to me that I've also noticed this with, I was actually having a conversation with somebody just a couple days yesterday, that I go out of my way to try to get him into my life because we both have similar agendas. And it's not just that, what can I learn from you? What can you learn from me? But we're both working on YouTube, and we both are trying to get more connected with God, get more, like, I want more life, more whatever, right? And it seems to me that those are relationships we're fighting for. And those are relationships where I think that it might even be super advantageous to, early on in the relationship, state what you want from this relationship, why you want to be able to say, hey, you know what? I'm actually looking for a come up partner. I'm looking for somebody that is going to be with me, that I can be with for 30 years. I need somebody in my life that when I send, you know, when I call, like, they answer the phone, they return my call, and that I can tell you what I'm struggling with and that I'm actually losing, and they won't condemn me, and I know that it'll never leave you know, it'll go to the grave with them.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems that those are the sorts of relationships that allow a man's soul to breathe a little bit and allows a person to not bear the burden of their own life all on their own. Right? Like,
They've never tended to be that way, right? I have two friends like that. I've known both of them for 50 years.
okay,
And I won't mention their names, but
it's a long time.
yeah. I met them both when I was 15. Actually, one's 49 years. I met him when I was 16. Both musicians. And those two guys are close to me, and I've literally told them stuff that I will never, well, I'm not saying never, but probably won't tell anybody else. Although I would like to have more friends like that, even going forward
Sure.
from my age. This is really something I've desired in the church, and I've spoken about it in the church. I remember shocking a congregation I was preaching to some years ago over in Portland, and I was preaching about something, and I got to the point, and I said, you know, I'm here to deliver my soul. You know, I'm an alcoholic. And I said, there are better bass players and better preachers. Jesus didn't come from my gifting. He came from me.
Mm.
And people were just stuck at when I said, hey, I'm an alcoholic.
Mm.
I'm preaching in a church and say that.
Mm.
And it's an active issue in my life. And it's so one guy, the youth pastor, came to me after and he goes, man, you're my hero. You're my hero. You know, because never heard anybody do it. And I was at a point where I really wanted something different, and I wanted to know God, and I didn't care, you know. And even to this day, you know, I was thinking about this when we were talking about standing before, you know, the throne judgment seat of Christ. Mm-hmm. Is that He will reveal whatever is hidden. Okay, so the best way to not have anything revealed that's hidden is just don't hide anything. Mm. Get it out and get it in the open and get it under the blood as soon as possible. I think that the ones that He says, they said, hey, Lord, Lord, in your name, we did all these. And He said, I never knew you. Are you being the ones that even though they looked like this person, you know, like our perception, inside they had a bunch of hidden stuff. It's just like the Pharisees. He said, outside you are like whitewashed. He said, you are like whitewashed sepulchres. Outside you're all clean, but inside you're full of dead men's bones. You're full of death, and literally called them murderers. And if anybody out there who's going to listen to this thinks that Jesus loves everybody, you'd be right. But we're not all God's children. And I just want to make this clear, because Jesus Himself said of the Pharisees, you are sons of the devil. Yeah. You know? There are people who look good and they're not going to be good. You know them by their fruit. And if when the church can get past ourselves, we would have access to unlimited power. And I mean power to overcome sin, power to preach the gospel to the ends of the earth, power to raise, you know, our families like we're supposed to, power to have successful businesses, power to run, you know, big, you know, community penetrating ministries. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We would have all of that if we would just be willing to, like, say, hey, you know, I got issues, I need prayer. And I'm not saying you tell everybody, like you said. Yeah. But you do need to confess, and you do need prayer. And I like James' admonition, man, you know, confess your sins one another, pray for one another that you might be healed, you know. Anyway, I'm kind of going off a little bit here.
Well, let's take a look at the next one. What could you relate to in the interview? Health, and how did you gain encouragement? So I was thinking about this in that Trent was talking about how long he was unhealthy and wasn't able to do anything.
20%, I think he said.
Yeah, he was at 20%. And dude, I died every time, because I listened to that interview a handful of times. Every time Grayson said, it was like talking to a potato. I was like, oh my gosh. And
that'd be a horrible experience.
Dude, but at the same time,
for both people,
at the same time, I know that there was a stretch where your health was all wonked up, and you know, he, you know what, and that's actually one of the things, kind of in retrospect, just sort of a side note. Um, when Trent and I first like connected as friends on Facebook, he just like friend requested me out of the blue. It was sort of odd,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I remember I was walking home from church, right? So I live 14 blocks south of here, right? So it's an hour and a half walk. I'm about halfway home,
Okay,
and
never mind.
I remember
Tell me why later.
I remember like I'm over in Orchards Park walking through the trail because that
Mm-hmm.
was part of the path, and this friend request comes in, and I said sure, because I recognized the name, and I knew that he was connected with Morgan somehow, and I messaged him, and I said let's get together for coffee, dude. He's like, why, right? And it was so
You
funny.
told, yeah.
It's so funny because the salesman in him was like immediately suspicious. Like,
Right.
oh my gosh, what did I do? And we got together and we sat down at Sherry's, and he told me then, he goes, hey man, I only get a few good hours a day, and then I'm gonna be in bed. When he said that, I really didn't know what that meant, right? It really didn't mean anything to me until yesterday, until we were talking, and he was going. I think I actually clipped out some of when he went into a tremendous amount of detail
Mm-hmm.
about how sick he was, and it's the rareness of things sometimes that determines their value. Um, and so looking back, I'm like, holy cow, that guy really actually did something that he didn't have to do, because he kind of blew a day.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it was 90 minutes. For him, that's what I got for the
Yeah,
day.
personal sacrifice.
One of the things that we talked about was um, being able to relate to somebody. So you could have, because of the health situation that you went through, right, where you got through it, um, you would have been able to talk to him and maybe be encouraging. While
Mm-hmm.
somebody like myself, I've never really, like I've had my issues, but I backed off like before I put myself on the bench for 2 years like him,
Right,
right?
right.
Um, Although I will take a warning from his life, because I do know how obsessed I get, and how I'll like disregard my health,
Mm-hmm.
um, because I'm chasing something to the point where I need to get drug off the field.
This literally, I've seen it kind of baked into some people. At Turning Point, when I was pastoring that church, I would work 12 to 13 hours a day and see my family seldom, sometimes.
Mm.
I would leave in the morning, go to pray a couple hours. I would go back home, have breakfast, take a shower, put my clothes on, go back to the church. And I did a regular old like 8 to 5 or 9 to 5 day. I would start every morning prayer with the staff. We'd get in the sanctuary. And then it would go. And usually there was a discipleship group, or there was a Bible study, or there was a service. And we were doing a lot of services. And it's one of the reasons that my marriage to Donna failed, one of them, besides my sinful nature. But I carried that with me into, after I left there, I needed to make money because I had to support my family, which I did. Never failed to do that. And I went to work selling cars. The same thing, 12 to 13 hours a day. I was running on the ragged edge. I would take a fifth of vodka with me every day. The end of the day, I'd be so burned out, we'd do cocaine, and then I couldn't go to sleep, and then I'd wake up a couple hours later and turn around and do it all again. And that led to a cocaine run. I don't know if you care about this or know about this, and you can always edit it out, but a cocaine run that froze my face. That's where my issues started.
Mm-hmm.
I was tired. I was burned out. I was asking my body to do something that God never intended it to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I literally was so driven to make that money. And I was making decent money because I had a crew of 9 guys that I was running. I made commissions off all of them. But that led to talk about being sidelined. I had to give up that job. I had to find the easiest job possible as a apartment manager. Because I needed a place to live. I had to have $600-700 a month coming in, and that's all I was living on. I had an apartment and like $600 a month. That was it. And but still made my child support. I don't even know how I did that. But that took me, that so devastated my life that it wasn't just 2 years. I mean, I'm still climbing out of that pit today. I'm still climbing out of that hole, you know, and I've swung back to the place where sometimes, I mean, I have the luxury because of you know what I do, that sometimes I happen to stay at home.
When I got saved in 91, part of me getting saved was getting delivered from cigarettes. Before I dedicated my life to Christ, like I got freed, and I was like, what just happened? Because I was all by myself sitting in a recliner in my parents' living room. And I had never felt like somebody was sitting on my chest before. I had never felt that difficulty breathing.
The weight.
And I'm sitting there all by myself. Now I'd been reading a children's NIV Bible, and I had been just slowly becoming more and more obsessed with Jesus, with this person, and I was shocked at how he interacted with people. I remember that being the thing that I was like just totally couldn't wrap my head around. And then I'm sitting there and I'm all by myself in the house. It's just me and the cat. And I go, I quit smoking. I swear to God, right now I quit smoking. And immediately it went away, right? And I stood up and I looked at the cat, and the cat was like, you know, doing cat things, not even paying attention to this thing. And later I get completely delivered from cocaine and alcohol, and like the things that I can relate and tell people about. That story is not helpful for a lot of people. The fact that I was at 210 pounds and God called me to get healthy and take my health seriously. It's been a slog and a battle and filled with lessons that when I get down to that weight and I get that result, that final result, other people that, you know, like that struggle with that, like have really a food addiction. Those are the people that I can say, hey, you know what? Because it's one thing to say, you know, here's the key. You just say, I quit smoking, I swear to God, and it'll happen, right? Like that's the lesson, right? But the person that had to battle and persevere their way through, like they are the kind that have lessons that they've learned, things that they can teach you, perspective changes, and it does seem that God shapes our lives to shape us, to make us useful for the world around us. And that's where we can wind up, you know, like I think that sometimes we wind up wishing that we could be delivered, no work, no effort. And the better way is to make us a useful tool. And it's unpleasant. It sucks. It's not enjoyable. But it's a better way.
Yeah, it is. It's, again, Sandy and I were talking about that this morning from Paul's testimony, you know, about me who used to be, and he describes who he was and how God delivered him. And because you guys were talking about goads, that's where the conversation came up, spurring one another on to love and good deeds. You know, it's hard for you to push against the goads. And we're talking about the way that God moves us, how he moves us, and what tools he uses.
Mm-hmm.
And often we think it's just Jesus standing there with his arms wide open. We very seldom think of Jesus as the guy behind us with a sharp pointy
Dude,
stick,
that's so funny.
hitting us in the rear to get us to move.
That's super funny. Because, yeah, if you actually picture that as, Paul, why do you kick against the goads?
Yeah.
And, like, if you actually picture that as, like,
Yeah.
like I don't picture that in his white robe and a halo and, like, this glow behind him, and then he's poking me.
No.
Like, I don't,
Yeah.
that's difficult for me to imagine, but it is the way that he does prod us and poke us and expose us to a fair amount of pain.
The inference I get from that is that his conscience was bugging him. The goads were his conscience. As he was persecuting Christians,
Probably, yeah.
taking them to jail, persecuting Hebrew
That's an
Christians.
anxious life.
Yeah.
What's it say that he was breathing out threats and
Right.
hate?
Exactly. That's exactly how he was described.
Consumed.
He's introduced like that. That's the first thing you heard about him. And Saul, breathing out threats, and then you get to the other side. But that was after years and years of transformation. He didn't just, your point's well taken, is that transformation, slow transformation, is usually lasting transformation. Not that getting delivered, because I don't do drugs anymore, obviously.
I haven't smoked a cigarette since 91.
And I just, there are things that God has set me free from. I mean, and even in healing, like the result of the brain bleed and everything is I got diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, and which I don't have. And because God just simply chose that I wasn't going to get it. He just healed me. So, and that's another story all by itself. But the Second Corinthians 1, I was thinking about this in reference to encouragement. Praise be to the God of all comfort, who comforts us in all of our tribulations or trials, so that we may comfort others with the same comfort we ourselves have received.
Yeah.
Okay. There's the comfort side of encouragement. The idea there is that I went through it, I got to the other side of it, and just like you were saying, this is what I learned, and this is what I can tell you about my experience, and this is why you're going to be okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that the idea, if I've, how did I gain encouragement? There wasn't like a huge amount of stuff that I found encouraging from the interview, except for the young man who loves Jesus with all his heart. And if there's anything in that interview that encouraged me, it's seeing that God can take his dad, super type A, super, whatever he is, frenetic. I don't know how to describe him. I don't know him. And move him to the place where he literally claimed, and I have no reason not to believe him, that he falls out of bed on his knees and starts praying. Okay, I'll just take him at his word. But whatever transformation took place in his life obviously impacted his son's life.
Yes.
And so his son is now the recipient of the encouragement that his dad's life has provided for him. An example, but more than that, this thing that my dad did it. My dad serving Jesus, my dad was successful. My dad, I can too. And that's the really encouraging part about it, especially for young guys who have families, because there is a path that we can take that our children, they'll believe that they can do anything. I mean, my two older sons are just very successful. I mean, one's got a net worth like 20 times mine, And I think not that that's the key, the total idea of success, but I think it's when they got to see me do stuff and build stuff and be something. And that's stuck. I'm not taking credit for it. I'm just saying they saw it and they thought, hey, that can happen. And that's, because I was serving God. And even now, I'm not going to be able to say this.
So, something that you said in there,
Thank you.
Something that I said in there, that you said in there, got me to thinking, that one of the things that, a 25-year-old, a 30-year-old. You know, sometimes, like for me, I'm like, throughout my whole 20s, throughout my 30s, I was like, why aren't I farther along? Why aren't I farther along? Like I was just pissed that I wasn't, didn't. And and then there came a moment, and it's hard to accept. It's really hard to accept. At least it was for me. The only way that you can become a 50-year-old is by living 50 years.
Yeah.
You
Right.
know,
Right.
there's a if you don't think that you're going to be different in 5 years, you're naive. Um, and I thought that I was going to be pretty maxed out as far as maturity and development got to when I hit about 30. I just figured that by then I should have everything figured out.
Yeah.
Right? If I'm paying attention, I'll have everything dialed in by then. And then 30 came and went, and I was like, what the heck? You know? Like, okay, well, we'll just keep clawing our way through. You hit 35 and you're like, oh my gosh, it seems like the goalpost moved farther away. And in the same way that, like, you'll never be able to do, our lives are simply not long enough for us to be able to do all of the things that we're interested in.
Yeah, true.
And
Or at least not this one.
and with respect to, dude, somebody said to me the other day, because like I'm fascinated with cooking. Even though I suck at it, I'm interested in music and that sort of thing. And I forwarded a handful of like these little video clips to somebody, and they were like, "Oh, maybe you're a chef or a baker or something like that." I'm like, "Not in this life. Like in this life, I'm focusing on just a handful of things."
You're holding with a recipe. I can read a recipe. It makes a mess.
I will explore pastry in the next world, in the next life, right? And I'll explore music in the next world. Right now, I'm focusing on just a handful of things because I want to have something to present to God. I want to live a life well. But the other thing is that, it seemed like I didn't appreciate it until I started like getting to this place where the closer that you get to God, the more that you realize there is of him. And the idea that you could get your head around something that's infinite, someone that's infinite, is when you're 20, this seems like I'll get this figured out, but as you get older and you get the closer and closer and closer you get to God, you realize, like he's just going to keep getting bigger and bigger. It's like getting closer and closer and closer to a really large wall that all of a sudden it consumes your peripherals, and you're like, and you realize you're not actually any closer.
Right.
Like you could just keep walking forever, and you're never going to bump into a conclusion. Okay, so it is a quarter after, almost. Go ahead.
Okay. Your thoughts are really interesting to me because I have a completely different perspective, like on the aging process.
Okay.
And it relates to like a call of God on somebody's life. And this might be part of my encouragement to young guys or whatever, but I also want to give one to older guys. The having squandered so many years and spent so many years suppressing the call of God, even planting churches and doing those things, but still not opening myself to what I know is my true potential and what he really wants to do with me. And coming at this stage at 65 years of age and no longer being able to resist him, I'm at a complete loss about what do you want me to do with all this? I mean, because I've got 30 plus years of stuff that's just been stuffed. I'm the guy who dreams sermons. I dream messages. I dream church services. I dream worship services. I dream, I mean, literally at night I have dreams of these things. It's just not, you know, don't dream about it. I literally have dreams of it and my involvement in it. And so I'm on this other side, and just now feel like, okay, I've got a whole nother season of maturity in front of me. Okay. And I matured in my faith early and accomplished some stuff, and then just, you know, isolated myself because of failure. And now here I am, and so I'm finding myself reopening myself to God and the possibility that this time from a little bit before this and to the end of my life is going to be like the greatest time of growth and maturity in my life. And that's really exciting to me. That's really encouraging to me. I don't know what that looks like. I don't know where the practical side of that comes out. I didn't even know how it works. I don't know how any of it works. I just know that when I woke up this morning and I went and made my cup of coffee and sat on the couch and got my little digital Bible out and went to Revelation and start reading and start talking to God and start reading the commentaries and stuff, I'm reignited, man. I am reignited. I just don't know why, you know. So I guess that whole idea that, you know, we're going to be get to a point where we've kind of got it together, or we kind of mature or whatever, I think that's kind of a fantasy. I think it's one of the things that creates this false illusion, or this illusion of retirement in the West, is that you work so many years and then you kind of get to your 65 or your 70, you take your retirement, and then you kind of go on vacations and you sit in the, you know, you sleep in early, have breakfast, da. And yet, when I read my Bible, some of the guys who did the greatest things ever were 80 plus.
Yes. No, there's some truth to that. There's some truth to that. Okay, so two things. One is, I want you to look into that camera.
Okay.
And then encourage the 20 to 25-year-old or 25 to 30-year-old ish. Okay. They're transitioning out of, they're coming to the realization that nobody's coming for them, and that they have to take responsibility for their lives. And that this is going to be harder than they thought it was going to be. And I just want you to encourage them in whatever way you want to do.
Wow.
Okay. So yeah, I'm that's like the chain that, like, I'm unhooking it and saying, just go do your thing. And then you said you wanted to encourage people that were more around your age.
Yeah. All right.
Camera's yours.
Goodness sakes. All right. So for young guys, let me put my thoughts together for a second. Here's my encouragement. Hopefully it's encouraging. Is that if you know God and you'll put your faith in Him and follow Him, He will accomplish through you greater things than you could ever imagine. God is ready to go and always has been since the day you were born. He's just waiting for you to believe in His power through you. He's waiting for you to turn to Him and submit to Him. He's waiting for you to lay hold of a sense of destiny in your life. He's waiting for you to say, yes, God, here I am. Excuse me, use me. You cannot think of a better, more powerful, more fulfilling, more gratifying life than the one that God has for you. It is impossible for you to conceive of what God has prepared for those that love Him, except if it's revealed to you by the Holy Spirit. The Bible clearly says that eye has not seen, ear has not heard, nor has it entered into the heart of man what God has prepared for them that love Him. But the next verse says, but He's revealed it to us by His Spirit. We desperately need a generation of young men who hear and respond to the call of God, who believe that they can be world changers, who believe that they can do something extraordinary, remarkable. And so Turn to God. Find a place. Find a purpose. Find a family, a community of faith. Find a place to serve. Find a place where you can actually fulfill the call of God on your life. And then for older men like myself, I want you to know how desperately you're needed to mentor, to train, to equip, and to disciple young men. That's your call. Every born-again Christian man should be discipling somebody. It could be a son. It could be your children, maybe a daughter. Could be somebody in your church, a young guy. Doesn't have to be struggling. Just has to be somebody who's hungry for God. All your experience and everything you've gone through in your life have a purpose, and the purpose is that you might build the church and disciple young men so that they can hear the voice of God, understand their purpose in God, and respond to His call. And for both groups, seek God with your whole heart. Submit to Him. Commit your way to Him, and He'll help you succeed. Will it be easy? No. Will it be exciting? Probably. Will it be rewarding? Absolutely.
Okay. All right. That will do it.
That's hard to do. And hold it together. You have no idea. You have no idea about the volcanoes.